All right, I guess we'll start. So sorry about the delay, everyone, but thank you for coming this evening. So first of all, on behalf of ACHSC, we would like to say good evening. And thank you heaps again for coming to the University Cancer Case Competition 2019 Information Lab. We're thrilled to see such a great turnout. My name's Isa, and this is Jess, and we are your UCCC co-directors of 2019. UCCC is the newest initiative under ACHSC, otherwise known as the Australian Cancer and Health Science Competition. We are a non-for-profit organisation that aims to nurture a future generation of cancer literate people empowered with the skills and knowledge to reduce the cancer burden on our society. So the aim of tonight is to introduce to you all the theme of UCCC 2019, which is bowel cancer, specifically bowel cancer screening, and the strategies that can be implemented to increase what are currently suboptimal rates. In order to give you all a well-rounded and holistic overview of this theme, we have invited tonight a fantastic lineup of guest speakers, all esteemed figures in the field who will talk about bowel cancer from various perspectives. So I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, Stephanie Bensema-Brown, who has a lived experience of bowel cancer. She's also the National Marketing and Publicity Director at Bowel Cancer Australia and is a board director at Cancer Council Victoria. Please join me in welcoming Stephanie tonight.
And technically incompetent, everyone.
So just feel free to click.
Perfect. Click or down.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, can everyone hear me? Last time I was in a university lecture theatre was a very, very long time ago. So thank you for having me here tonight. Esteemed, and I can't hold a mic. Esteemed, I'm not sure that is for me, but it is for my fellow speakers. I was particularly excited to come and speak to you today. I've done a few talks around my lived experience, but particularly because you are our future. My name's Stephanie Bensema-Brown and I am a bowel cancer survivor. I've been asked to talk to you about my lived experience. I've got to warn you, I don't come from a medical background, so there won't be a lot of medical speak, and I don't think you'll probably want to take that many notes for what I've got to say, but I come from a world of TV and sport, but what I hope I promise you is delivering you an authentic and real story. Before bowel cancer, as I said, I came from the world of TV. I was head of marketing and PR for Network 10 to 15 years. I launched shows such as Big Brother, Australian Idol. I launched MasterChef, which is still the highest rating TV show in history outside of sport. I did sport. I've rubbed shoulders with pretty much, the glitterati, and it is not that glamorous. I've met Hugh Jackman, Oprah Winfrey, Mr. Big, for those that are old enough to know who that is. Sex and the City repeats, and he's not as nice as what he appears. But the reason I say that to you is when we're in TV, we used to have a saying that said, we're not saving lives. We used to get our knickers in a twist when some reality star had been caught pashing another celebrity and was going to be front page of the Herald Sun. I then came to realise that that was not something to be concerned about, and that there are people who truly are saving lives. I consider myself to be one of the lucky ones. Lucky because I trusted my instincts when I was told that you are too young for bowel cancer, you have hemorrhoids. Lucky because I insisted on further investigation. Lucky because I only had to wait 5 days for a colonoscopy as opposed to 165 days. Lucky because after diagnosis, I was in surgery within 12 days. Lucky because I had the best care. Lucky because I had an amazing surgeon who managed to save me from a permanent bag. Lucky that my bowels have now returned to normal, and I'm happy to say I fart and poo, and that is fabulous. Lucky because 7 years later, I'm here to see my son grow up, who at the time when I was sick, he was only 2.5. And particularly lucky because he's off to run national cross country next week, and I'm just bloody lucky that I'm there to see it. In 2013, I was dealt what we like to call in TV land a shit sandwich, quite literally. When anyone is dealt the cancer card, it is a myriad of emotions. Every person, though, is different, and every person reacts differently, and they also need a different approach. And I think that is key. For me, humour and positivity was very important, and I like to talk about my experience. There is, oh, can you still hear? Yes. That is important for me, but for others, it's not. Others want to go into their shell and not talk about it. Feeling sorry for myself was not something that I was going to do. Now let's see whether I can, there we go. And positive thoughts was really important. It certainly made my journey easier. And this little quote, I think, really encapsulates it for me, that you can either feel sorry for yourself or you can treat what happened as a gift. At times you don't think it is a gift, but looking back, I do. Everything is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you growing. You get to choose. I didn't choose to get cancer, and I wasn't able to choose the medical path I took. Well, I could choose it, but I was guided by medical staff, but I could choose how I viewed it. And I think that's a really important factor for somebody who's going through any form of cancer. There were highs and lows, and throughout my cancer journey, I experienced all of those emotions. But two that really stuck out for me was the day I was diagnosed. There was part relief, to be honest, because it wasn't ovarian cancer, which my mother had. But it was also, oh my God, what do I do? I've been dealt the big C. And then the day that I was being wheeled down the corridor of Cabrini Hospital was like a scene out of Grey's Anatomy because I was being walked down this white wall, and I just left my son, who was still sleeping, and I didn't know whether I was going to see him again because, as you all know, there's always a risk with going through surgery. The real practicalities, though, of having the disease that often I think are missed, but is really important, and I was talking to Professor Mark Jenkins about this, is the support factor. You're often exhausted. Nobody tells you how exhausted you're going to be when you go through chemotherapy. Neuropathy. Oh, you'll have some neuropathy, but it will clear up, I was told. I still have that in my fingers 7 years later, and I just learned to live with it, but I wasn't really prepared for that. Or I was told, you won't lose your hair with this form of chemo, and then when it fell out and I was pretty much bald, it was quite a shock to me, and I had to put on old Wendy the wig, as I like to call her. Food for a bowel cancer patient and your diet. Boy, oh boy, that is a topic, because when you have an ileostomy bag, there's certain things you can and can't eat. And I ate corn, and that feeling, that feeling of the corn coming back out felt like what I imagined a popcorn machine was. It would go pop, 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 and it was the weirdest sensation. These are the things that sometimes I think are overlooked, and the practical realities of what we go through. And often as a patient, you are coming to grips with cancer, and there's a lot of medical jargon. You're overloaded with medical terms and precision, but for the patient, often it's about the emotion of it. You tend to forget a lot of what you've been told, and I always had someone with me to then relay what was actually said to me. And that patient pathway, I think we're beginning to understand, is so very important. Patients want to feel heard. They also want to feel like they've been informed in a way that they understand. And I suppose for you, coming into that world, don't ever forget that human element, because yes, it's all about precision and it's all about medicine, absolutely, but don't forget the human element, because that's what the patient feels. As I said, I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed when I was 42, and I presented with symptoms. I had blood in my poo, but I was dismissed as too young. My sister was a genetic counsellor, and she eventually said, can you please go and have a colonoscopy? And even then, when I went to see another doctor, they said, no, there will be nothing. You won't have bowel cancer. Don't worry about it. I came out and I had stage 3 bowel cancer. So you're never too young. These are if you don't know the numbers, these are the numbers. Over 15,000 people are diagnosed every year, and almost, not quite, almost 1 in 10 new cases now occur in those under 50 years of age. And the biggest stat that I find interesting now is that bowel cancer is now the deadliest cancer for those aged 25 to 29. So it is a misconception that it's an old man's disease and that you can be too young. I'm not unique by any stretch. At Bowel Cancer Australia, we hear these stories constantly. And I think it's about educating GPs as well, that I like to say, investigate and discard the fact that it may not be bowel cancer and work backwards, rather than leaving bowel cancer to be the last point of contact and say, oh, well, we better check and just make sure it's not bowel cancer. Recently, I was speaking with a patient through our peer-to-peer network, and she is 32. She thought something was the matter, went to her GP. The GP said, no, there's nothing the matter. She went back again. When she went back again, she was 4 weeks pregnant. She didn't realise. She then couldn't have a colonoscopy, or nobody would give her a colonoscopy. She finally had I forgot, I can't pronounce it, but the sigmoidoscopy, there you go. I told you I wouldn't be good with medical terms. And she's discovered that she's got stage 3 bowel cancer, and she is about to give birth to her child and have the surgery. So I think it's about also trusting your instincts as well. I'm a marketer and a communicator by trade, and I believe with screening, because that's what we're here to talk about today, this is one of the biggest issues facing bowel cancer, in the sense that people do not want to talk about it. As women, we talk about our boobs, we have pap smears, we have babies, we talk about every other part of our body, but we don't, and men talk about prostate more now, which is good. But poo, that's taboo. It shouldn't be. Why? The biggest problem is that we are just not wanting to talk about it, and the idea of dipping a little stick in some poo freaks us out, and we need to break that stigma, because I can assure you, having someone, sorry guys, but breathing down your bottom and having an ileostomy bag, that was not a pleasant experience for me at 42. I can remember my son, actually, I was at Chadstone and he was only 3, and I had chemo, and he yelled out, my mum poos and farts in a bag, which was right, he wasn't wrong there. So we need to break through these barriers. We need to overcome this ick factor. And at Bowel Cancer Australia, we created an ad. Now we'll see. We've also changed some wording. Bowel cancer is the second highest cancer killer, and at Bowel Cancer Australia, we say it's the second deadliest cancer. But we created an ad, and Bowel Cancer Australia has a different role than Cancer Council Victoria. We're there for patient, and we're there to not agitate, but create talk and conversation, so we can be a little bit more out there. And we created this ad, and hopefully this will work.
So when it comes to keeping people alive, who gets all the credit? The hearts. Pump, 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 pump. What else do you do? Nothing. I tell you what I do. I take the trash out every day, sometimes twice. And what's the cherry on top of that crap Sunday that's my life? I'm the home of Australia's second deadliest cancer. Aren't I? Hello? No. No one's in and listening.
And that's Bill Bailey, the comedian Bill Bailey, who kindly donated his time for that. And now I might have to, can I please have some help? And I also want you to listen to this.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email.
That's not part of it. And now I'd like you to, this is an ad, a radio ad, so it's just audio.
Hello. Thank you. Anyway, when it comes to keeping people alive, who gets all the credit? Oh, the heart. Oh, yes, pump, 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 pump the blood, la, 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 boring, boring, boring. And yet it gets all the applause, like it just won the channel or flown the Atlantic single-handed in a bucket or something. What about the lungs? Oh, yes, oh, yeah, breathe in, breathe out. Oh, yeah, what else can you do? Nothing, really? Oh, yes, and the prize for breathe. Nothing. Come on, who's doing the real work? Me, muggings, downstairs, taking out the trash every day, sometimes twice, sometimes a lot more than that if you've been to the tropics. And you know what? You know what the cherry on the top of the crap sundae that's my life? I'm the home of Australia's second deadliest cancer, aren't I? But no one's even listening. Yeah.
Give a crap about your bowel. Search Bowel Cancer Australia.
So we're trying to challenge there a little bit and get people thinking, because I think even if they may not agree with the sentiment of it, they'll remember an ad. And, you know, that's my world, is marketing. That radio ad actually won a Siren Award, which is the Oscars of TV and radio creative. And we also then, off the back of that, Grew and Transfer talked about us for a good 20 minutes, which was nearly half their show. And it's that sort of exposure that we're hoping will break through and talk to the mass population, because that's what we need to do with screening. We need to just at least put bowel cancer on the agenda, because I didn't know about bowel cancer and I felt foolish. I thought I was a reasonably intelligent human being and I felt foolish that I didn't know about it. So that's what I think we need to do. Cancer Council Australia, which the lovely Aisha, Head of Community Engagement, and I'm a board member of, will be talking to you shortly about the wonderful work that they do in that prevention space, and the screening program, which is fantastic. And last night on the project, there was a fabulous story that talked again and to a different audience. And again, getting a story on the project, it's starting to talk to that mass population, which I think is really important. And we really are, I think, making some headway. I think by the time we get to my son, he's 10, and by the time we get to my son's, you know, they'll be a lot more aware of it. I mean, he talks about it. He goes to junior school council and raises funds for bowel cancer. But he's in a little bit different situation, having had me and lived it with me. From a survivor's perspective, communication needs to be consistent, I think, across all platforms: medical, media, government and cancer organisation. Let's get this 15,000 down. I'm being optimistic. I don't want it to go up. I want it to go down. Let's save some lives, and the dream of making a reality where no Australian dies from bowel cancer, I think, is a wonderful one. It is preventable, it is treatable, and it is beatable. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your lived experience of bowel cancer. Our next guest speaker is Associate Professor Craig Lynch, a colorectal surgeon, highly experienced in laparoscopic and minimally invasive colorectal surgery. Associate Professor Craig Lynch will give us a clinical insight into bowel cancer.
Great stuff. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. This is not really much about screening, but it's about what we do when we find a cancer. You find these little monsters when you do colonoscopies because you've had some bleeding or whatever, and then it's a matter of trying to fix it. This is what it looks like from the outside. There's a cancer there, and a nice happy bit of bowel, but that bit of cancer, it's got to go. When we start off, cancers can spread. They don't usually stay local. They can spread to lymph nodes, lungs and livers. So our treatment usually comes up with a plan that might include radiation first or some chemotherapy, and it can be quite a long, drawn-out, arduous journey for the patient. I'll talk mainly about surgery and what we actually do to fix these things, because surgery is the mainstay of curing it. There's a colon, nice diagram of a colon. In particular, there's lots of little lymph nodes, and those lymph nodes are one of the first places that will harbour cancer spread. And our surgery is usually based about cleaning out the tumour and those lymph nodes. The lymph nodes are really important too, because if they are involved, it's a good sign the patient will need some chemotherapy afterwards. Basic stats. This is why we like screening. Early stage tumours that we find early do really well. Patients survive and they don't really get a recurrence. Even with T2 tumours that have been there a bit longer and grown into the wall of the bowel, still do pretty good. We can get up there with good long-term survival. There's a few recurrences, but often we can fix those. But tumours that get a bit bigger, start growing through the wall of the bowel, they're more likely to have lymph nodes involved, more likely to recur in the liver or the lungs, and here we see the survival really drop off. So tumours that have grown for a bit longer, we don't do as well with. And then not only these ones, but there's also tumours that are quite aggressive locally, and they'll grow into other organs or spread around the peritoneal cavity. And similarly, they don't do so well. So early stage tumours we find early with screening, 90% success rate. Late tumours that turn up down the track a bit, maybe only get a 50% 5-year survival. So, as I said, we base our surgery on bits of colon we take out and also the lymph nodes. There's a bit of colon, there's a cancer on the right side of the colon. Rectal tumours, this is an MRI scan. Now, the patient's looking that way, so you can see their tailbone, bladder's in front, and this is the rectum in here, and this is tumour. The rectum's a bit more difficult to deal with. It hangs out in fat, so there's a big sort of circle of fat around it and within the rectum, and you can see the tumour here puckering up, taking about half the circumference of the rectum. So taking a rectum out is like operating in a bucket, really, because you've got all these hard pelvic structures, and in the middle is a tumour and a bowel and all this mesentery and fat that all has to come out as a package, sort of like that. And you've got to get all that out. If you leave bits behind, it's going to come back. So we can usually mobilise a rectum, take it out, and that's the sort of thing we get out, which is a rectum with a tumour buried in the middle somewhere, and all this fat around it, which has potentially got tumour in it, and it's nice mesenteric encasement. So if we do it well, it won't come back. And then we can try and join the bowel up. Their main aim is to really try and reconstruct. So we can reconstruct once we've taken a rectum out or joined bowel together pretty much most of the time. And we can do that with various staplers and other things to join it together. Occasionally though, especially if the tumour is very low or involves the sphincter muscle, we can't join things up. So we have to take out not only the rectum, but also the anal muscles themselves. So that leaves a bit of a big hole usually. But that's what you've got to do. If you're going to take the cancer out, you can't leave bits behind. So that's a rectum that's gone, and also anal sphincters. So we'll close that up, and then the patient gets a stoma, a colostomy, which will be permanent. So that's it sitting there, and that'll be a permanent stoma for them. But if we do the surgery right, that is still potentially a very curative operation. Now, surgery is always about technology. So we can do a lot of interesting things with surgery to make it more minimally invasive and easier for the patient to get through so they have a better recovery and do well at the other end. So we do a lot of laparoscopy where we use a camera and long instruments, which means we don't have to put big incisions in the abdomens. So we'll put little ports in, and we can put a camera through here and long operating instruments. And there's some long operating instruments, and we can do an as precise cancer operation as we can any other way this way. But the advantage is the patient's got no big scars, and they get out of hospital and back to real life a lot quicker. Plus you get to watch it on the TV when you're done. So we can take a lot of colon out through a tiny hole, and the patient sees benefits for that if we have to take a lot of colon out. Now, even more tech these days is we can do that with robots, which, apart from being expensive, also do the job a bit better because they give us a lot more precision with the way we can operate, especially down in the rectum, where we can preserve nerves and make sure we can do the best quality surgery to get the cancer out. So what's a robot? It's basically those same laparoscopic instruments attached to this cart, which we dock over the patient. You can see the patient sitting down here, hiding. And then when it's all docked, I wander over to the corner and operate. And we operate these instruments remotely, and they've got little wrists and things, so we can be very precise about what we do and do a very good job about doing the surgery. And looking down there, I can see things in 3 dimensions because there's 2 cameras that we use. So it's a true 3-dimensional view that I'm getting as I'm operating. So what I'm seeing is this. So this is that rectum, and I'm really trying to get that rectum out with all that fat around it in the perfect plane. And so things like the robot mean I can do that really well. I won't show you the whole thing because it'll take an hour. There's also fun things we can do with the robot because it's got the ability to detect fluorescing liquids, like what we call ICG. So I can put a stent in the ureter that goes from the kidney to the bladder, and then I can make that light up so I can find it easily through tissue and then protect it and not damage it as I'm operating. Again, all these things are trying to make us do a better operation and get the patient through it and get the cancer out so it's not going to come back. Now, robots can also do fun things about early stage tumours. And we can operate transanally with the robot. So early stage tumours that we can locally excise, take them off and then sew up the defect. And that's really minimally invasive, and the patient can get over that really quickly and get home the next day. So screening is about finding these things early when I can just chop it off like this, as opposed to do a major operation, which has got major complications often and has a major impact on the patient. So we've taken the cancer off and we can sew up the hole, and because it's an early stage, we don't worry about lymph nodes or anything like that. Now, a big chunk of my work, unfortunately, is fixing cancers when they come back. So more advanced cancers are more likely to come back. They can come back in the liver or the lungs, but they can also come back locally, which often needs a major operation. So you can see here, this is a PET scan. So the patient's been given radioactive glucose. So the tumour sitting here lights up. And to take that out is a big event and will involve taking out the rectum and the bladder. And that'll often leave the patient with 2 bags, a bag for their bowel motions, but also a bag for their urine. And that's the sort of thing you have to take out, which is a bladder. And actually that's a prostate. And then there's the rectum underneath it. And then there's the sphincter muscles down the bottom. But that's what you've got to clean up to take out a cancer that's returned. And that leaves a big hole in a patient. So that's a patient's pelvis with nothing in it. So these are the blood vessels heading down each leg, and there's nothing in the middle. But people get over that, and they get on with it, and they do okay. Because we give them a stoma, which is a colostomy, and then we can use a bit of the small bowel to connect up to the kidneys. So they have another stoma to collect urine as well. And people do okay with that, with a survival that's similar to a lesser stage cancer. There you go, 2 bags, 1 for urine, 1 for bowel motion. But that's an advanced cancer, and this is the trick. I don't really feel the need to spend my day doing that. I'd much rather operate on early stage cancer, things we've found early and can fix in a simple way, and the patient gets on with life. rather than trying to salvage a late situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Craig Lynch, for that fantastic and informative presentation. But of course, the issue of bowel cancer exists beyond a clinical setting. And on this note, I would like to welcome our next guest speaker, Aisha Ghosh, who is a Community Engagement Coordinator for Screening, Early Detection and Immunisation at Cancer Council Victoria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. As Isa said, I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Cancer Council Victoria, and my role involves increasing participation in cancer screening, particularly bowel, breast, and cervical cancer screening among community members who are underscreened. So today I will be talking about the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program and what we at Cancer Council are doing to increase participation in the national program, and particularly what are we doing to target communities that are not screening. So we know that early detection saves lives. 90% of cases can be successfully treated if detected early. However, this is not happening. There is quite a lot of bowel cancers that are being detected late. We know that bowel cancer is the third most common cancer, but despite that, it is the second most cause of cancer deaths in Australia after lung cancer. And that is primarily because of the late stage at which it is being detected. So there are many types of cancers that are symptomless or have symptoms that are more difficult to detect. And bowel cancer happens to be one of these. Therefore, it is good to get screened, and we encourage screening so that bowel cancer can be picked up before the symptoms show up, which is at a much later stage. We know that there are some factors that put people at risk for bowel cancer. So having a family history of bowel cancer increases someone's risk of bowel cancer. However, we also know that 80% of people who get bowel cancer have no prior family history. So the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program, we're lucky to have this program in Australia. It started in 2006, and it offers a free bowel cancer screening kit that is sent in the mail to all eligible Australians. The kit is, like I said, free, easy to use, and it can be completed in your home. Usually takes 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how slow you are at reading instructions. And like I said, it's mailed by the Commonwealth Government. So the details are taken from Medicare as well as the Department of Veteran Affairs. So the information that you have on record needs to be correct so that it's mailed to the right address. And, if you're moving around a lot, make sure that it is in the correct address, and, your neighbor's not lucky enough to get your kit, or no one's taking your kit when it should be coming to you. By 2020, all Australians between the age of 50 to 74 will receive this free kit, and they will receive it every 2 years. So like I said, bowel cancer can be detected early when people participate in this free test. And the test looks for traces of poo in the blood, which are, traces of poo that might be invisible to the naked eye, is picked up when you do the kit. It's important to remind people who do the test, who receive a positive result back. So basically, the kit comes to your house, you do the kit, you send it off, and within 2 weeks, you'll receive a letter. And the letter says, your test was positive. If it says it was positive, it actually means that they found traces of blood in the poo. it's important to remind people that this does not mean they have bowel cancer. It means that they need to go see their GP because they could have an infection, they could have something else going on. But the call to action is go see your GP. If the letter says your test was negative, it means that you do nothing and you will receive the kit in 2 years again when you should do it. The good thing is most people, at least 80% of people who do the kit the first time, they often redo the kit when it arrives in 2 years. So it's that easy. However, getting someone to do the kit the first time is difficult. There are a lot of barriers, a lot of, I think, mental barriers more than anything, because I think physically a lot of people can do it, but there's the issue of, the yuck factor of I'm going to touch my poo and what's going to happen. There's also, they recommend, because you have to take 2 samples of your poo, they also say that the first sample needs to be stored in the fridge, and that's a major barrier for a lot of people. But it's, again, a mental barrier. You can put 10 Tupperwares and you can put your sample, I don't know, glad wrap it and put a big sign saying don't touch. I think that's better than having to go for a colonoscopy because you found a symptom at a much later stage. There is the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program website. I'll go over this in the end, but they have an animation on how to complete the test. So the kit that some of you have will see that it's all in English, and you receive a brochure in the kit that tells you exactly how to do the kit. And it's quite straightforward. However, someone might want to see an animation on exactly what to do. So they can go on the website and they can view this animation, and it's available in many languages. And, that's overcoming one of the barriers for underscreened communities who do not, feel as comfortable listening to instructions or reading instructions in English. So the participation rate. So we know that this is a great test, and we know that bowel cancers should be detected early. Despite that, participation in the screening, in the program is quite low. So nationally, 41% of people participate in bowel cancer screening. And this is even lower in underscreened communities that my program is targeting. So for the Aboriginal community, it's only 21% of the people who receive this kit who actually complete it. And it's such a waste because they're getting this free test that they can do. And there are, several barriers to doing the kit that I'll talk about. Participation in Victoria is 43%. We know that male participate less than females, despite the fact that men are more likely or at a slightly higher risk for bowel cancer than women. So the chance of a man getting bowel cancer, of being diagnosed with bowel cancer by the age of 85 is 1 in 11, versus for women it is 1 in 28. Also, Cancer Council research has shown that if the participation rates increase to 60%, we will be able to save 84,000 lives in the next 20 years. So why are people not screening? We've gone to communities, especially communities where bowel cancer screening is not taking place. And we've asked people, we've conducted focus groups, talked to key stakeholders, and we've tried to understand what is going on. Why are you not screening? You're getting this kit free, it's in your house. You can do the test. And some of the most common barriers that we have been told is there's lack of knowledge about bowel cancer. So people feel if there's no family history, they're not at risk, or that it's not a very common cancer. There's also shame associated with doing the test itself. They don't want to talk about it with other people in the community, and therefore don't seek as much information about it. There's fear of diagnosis. What am I going to do if I'm diagnosed? It's better that I don't know. There's also not being familiar with the process of doing the kit. Additional barriers for culturally diverse communities include language spoken. So if someone speaks a language other than English, there is an additional barrier. They're getting a letter by the government. It's not easy English. The letter is quite, complicated. And in order to understand what really is happening with your sample and what you're supposed to do, you need to be quite proficient in English. And also another thing we've noticed with culturally diverse communities is that there is this attitude of fatalism where, a lot of communities feel it's God's will. If I'm supposed to get cancer, so be it. So after all these consultations, what are some things that we have done? I can talk about some strategies that we have implemented, and I can show you some examples. Some of the things that have worked in the community to overcome some of these barriers are involving peer educators. Not all communities respond well to this. So certain communities do like having peer educators, community members who come and talk to them about or educate them about bowel cancer screening and tell them what to do in terms of testing. There's social media campaigns that we have carried out in certain communities. So we asked the community, what is the social media outlet that most resonates with your community members? And, for the Chinese community, it's been WeChat. For the South Asian community, it's been YouTube. So we've used these channels to create videos and content to reach community members. There's also the television ad that is more for the general population. So, things like pushing content through shows like The Project that is watched more by the general population, and also maybe the underscreened populations, but that's more of a general approach we've taken of TV. We've used local media outlets such as print and radio to have a lot of these ads in language, so that again community members understand that they are at risk. It's being spoken in their language. It's something that they're being targeted for, so they need to take action. What we've also done is use community champions. So using famous people from the community or respected religious leaders or comedians in the community who are well known, and kind of disseminated information through them, through video content or community events and sessions that we've held. And also one thing that really came through in terms of strategies that was quite effective is using a GP to endorse the effectiveness and the importance of doing the kit. So, a lot of times people get this kit in the mail, it's from the Australian government, and they really don't know what's going on. A lot of community members have told me that, they're very suspicious of what's happening with that sample and how long it is being kept and what else can they test with it. And these are valid questions that are not often answered when you receive a kit in the mail. So it's good to have a GP from the community, a trusted GP who endorses the kit. And we've, implemented a few projects that use GP endorsement. So either a text that goes out through the GP clinic in language, telling people that they should do the kit when they next receive it, or a GP endorsed letter. We've also created a video with the GPs speaking different languages, encouraging community members to do the kit. So this is an example of the print and social media ads. Last year, we targeted the South Asian community. So the top image is of a Hindi ad that we printed in Indian newspapers. And we used a local community champion holding the kit. So, not only her social network, but also, that identification with this person is from our community. And the below image is a WeChat banner we created for the Chinese community. And the message we were going for is do it for your family, be around longer for your family. And that's a strategy that we've used quite a few times because we've heard that works with certain communities. We've also done a GP endorsement video for the South Asian community. Let's see if this plays. Oh, there.
පිළිකාවලින් සිදුවන මරණ අතුරින් දෙවැනි ස්ථානය ගන්නේ බඩවැලේ පිළිකා. නමුත් ඔබට සුබ පණිවිඩයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ තමයි බොහෝ විට සාර්ථක ලෙස ප්‍රතිකාර කළ හැකි මුල් අවදියේම බඩවැලේ පිළිකා හඳුනා ගැනීම උපකාර වන නිවසේ සිටම කළ හැකි පරීක්ෂණයක් ඇති බව.
එම පරීක්ෂාව ඉතාමත් ඉක්මනින් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම පහසුවෙන් පිළිසිදු කරන්න පුළුවන්. එම පරීක්ෂාව කිරීමෙන් පිටට මහත් සහනයක් දැනෙනවා.
ඒ පරීක්ෂණය ඉතා පහසුයි. සෞඛ්‍ය ආරක්ෂිතයි. ඒ වගේම නොමිලේ සිදු කරන එක. ඒ ඔබේ පවුල සහ ඔබේ නිරෝගී බව වෙනුවෙන් සිදු කරන ලෙස මා ඉතා ඕනෑකමින් කාරුණිකව ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
So this was for the Sri Lankan community. So you can see it was a GP endorsed ad, a video with a GP and a community member. So it's hitting 2 tick marks at the same time. The next video I'm going to show is something that we developed after consultations with the Aboriginal community, which you know has a 21% participation in bowel cancer screening. The community said that bowel cancer is something that is not often openly discussed within the community. It's somewhat of a taboo topic, and their solution was to discuss it using humor. And they said that works. So what we did is 2 things. One, we asked an Aboriginal comedian who's a Deadly Funny Award winner. Her name is Denise McGuinness. We asked her to create a comedy, that talks about various things, but then towards the end, she talks about bowel cancer in a funny way, and then also demonstrates how to do the kit. And when she developed this 30-minute comedy, we contacted a lot of regional Aboriginal community-controlled health organizations and organized a comedy event. And so far, we've delivered 7 comedies across Victoria, and they have been quite well received. Combining food and comedy and getting community members to come together has been a good idea in the Aboriginal community. The other thing we did was we created this animation with a well-known figure from the Aboriginal community called Uncle Jack, and he talks about screening. So I'm going to play that video.
Hello, it's Uncle Jack Charles here. Now, I know a lot of our mob don't like having a health check, whether it's for the bike, car, or the body. Now, I've actually got a lot in common with my bike. We're both getting on in years, and we make strange sounds that we never used to make. Heart squeak, tooth rattle, and occasionally lick, surprising passers-by. So if you are a man or a woman, make sure you get regular health checks. All you women, check for breast cancer and cervical cancer. And you men, especially you men and women, bowel cancer, get your bowel checked, please. Because early detection is so important. It could save your life. And please, go and see an Aboriginal health worker or a doctor today, not a mechanic. Oops, bit of a senior's moment there. Stay healthy and deadly. Thank you.
So that was integrated messaging that we used. We targeted all 3 cancers, but it has worked well in the community. I'm going to ask Jessica to help me pull up the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program website. So if you Google National Bowel Cancer Screening Program, I think the first thing that comes up is Cancer Council, and then the next one is National Bowel Cancer Screening Program website itself. And this is just me trying to direct you to the animation.
Bowel cancer screening can save your life. When it's detected early, 9 out of 10 cases can be treated successfully. The chance of getting bowel cancer increases from the age of 50. That's why Australians aged between 50 and 74 will receive a free test kit in the mail every 2 years. People who've done the test say it's quick, clean and easier than they expected. You'll receive an envelope in the mail that will include everything you need to do the test. including your participant details form, 2 flushable toilet liners, 2 labelled collection tubes, a Ziploc bag, a reply-paid envelope, and easy-to-follow instructions. The test is looking for invisible traces of blood in your poo, which could be a sign of cancer or a precancerous growth. All you need to do is collect 2 tiny samples from 2 separate poos. Collect the 2 samples as close together as possible. This can be on the same day, the next day, or as soon as you can. Take 1 collection tube and write your name, date of birth, and the date you are taking the sample on the white label. Place it within easy reach of the toilet. Do a wee and flush the toilet. Then take one of the flushable toilet liners and lay it over the water in the toilet bowl. This will catch your poo. Once you have done a poo, the next step is to open the collection tube by twisting the green cap. Scrape the tip of the stick attached to the cap over different areas of the surface of the poo. You only need a tiny sample, smaller than a grain of rice. Put the stick back into the collection tube and click the lid shut. Shake the tube up and down several times. Make sure you don't open it again. You can now flush the toilet as normal. The toilet liner is biodegradable. Place the tube into the Ziploc bag and store it somewhere cool. A fridge is ideal, but do not freeze the sample. When you're ready to take your next sample, repeat the process using the second collection tube. This can be on the same day, the next day, or as soon as you can. Once you're done, seal the Ziploc bag with the 2 tubes in it and put the bag in the fridge. Now you're ready for the final step. Fill out your participant details form, then put it in the reply-paid envelope along with a Ziploc bag containing your 2 samples. Make sure you read the checklist on the back of the envelope before sealing it. Write your name and address on the back of the envelope and sign the front. Now all you need to do is mail the samples within 24 hours if you can. Postage is free. The samples can be affected by heat, so make sure you don't leave them in a hot car or direct sunlight. For this reason, it's best if you can drop them to your local post office as soon as possible after they are removed from the fridge. If you do have to use an Australia Post mailbox, please post them in the late afternoon, before 6 p.m. Your samples will be sent to the laboratory and your results will be mailed to you in around 2 weeks. If you receive a negative result, this means that no blood was found in your samples. You won't need to do anything else until your next test in 2 years' time. However, if you develop symptoms in the meantime, talk to your doctor. If you receive a positive test result, this means that traces of blood were found in your samples. This could be due to conditions other than cancer, and it's important to make an appointment with your doctor to investigate. If you have questions about how to do the test, call 1800 930 998.
Okay, seems simple, right? We can all do it. There's in your language page, if you click this, they have the brochure and the video, as well as the consent form that people need to sign is all in their language. And one of the biggest barriers we've heard is also the consent form, because it's a 2-page consent form that comes with the kit. It's not in these sample kits that are sent around, but it is a barrier. People don't know what to do with it. So that's it from me. Thank you.
We have 2 more incredible guest speakers in the lineup, and first is Professor Mark Jenkins, who has been absolutely instrumental in developing the UCCC 2019 case file. Professor Mark Jenkins is the director of the Centre for Epidemiology and Biostatistics at the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health. Please join me in welcoming Professor Mark Jenkins.
See, I'm a lecturer, so I know how to do this. I was thrilled when the group came to me to ask me to help with this competition, and that's because I've been frustrated in trying to work out ways of getting people to increase their participation in bowel cancer screening, and having fresh eyes and fresh ideas about this approach I think is really a good opportunity, so I couldn't say no. So I'm an epidemiologist. I'm going to talk about risks, I'm going to talk about how to prevent the disease, and I'll talk about why we need more research. So here's some numbers. You've already seen a lot of numbers, but this is a sort of a quick, you've already heard there's 16,000 cases. This is an estimate for 2019. Males and females affected, slightly more males. The deaths, you know, you're looking at that ratio, you'd say it's about a third are dying over a long period. Similarly, again, slightly more males. This is the 5-year survival. So you heard about this from Craig, that this is relative survival. So this is the percentage of people of the same sex and age without colorectal cancer compared to the people with. So you've got a 70% relative survival compared to healthy people, your age and sex. If it's stage 1, it's 99%. If it's stage 2, it's 89, 71, down to 13 in stage 4, especially the later parts of stage 4. There's 138,000 people still alive today that have had bowel cancer. So we heard about one today. There are a lot of people out there living with bowel cancer. They've had to live with the symptoms of bowel cancer. They've had to live with the extra costs of living with bowel cancer and all the other things, including some people having lifelong ileostomy or colostomy bags. About 1 in 20 will be diagnosed by the age of 75, but that can be reduced massively because of screening. So this is the incidence rate. So this means the number of new cases per year per age group. That's what incidence means. And this is per 100,000 people. And what you can see is the risk is pretty low and then it starts rapidly climbing. This is almost exponential. This is why we're targeting this age group with the screening program and not this age group and not this age group. You might say, well, hang on, the risk is even higher in this age group. And there's the proportions. So if you're 0 to 49 years, your chance of getting colorectal cancer in that age group is only 4 in 1,000. So we have a very unlucky person here, but it's only 4 in 1,000. It's 34 in 1,000. You can see that's almost 9 times bigger. That's why we screen this group. You might say, well, why don't we screen this group, 75 plus? It's because when they looked at the ratio of the benefit in terms of your life expectancy saved, it wasn't worth it in terms of health economics, which sounds harsh, but a government has to decide where to put the health budget. And they decided that once you're over 75, you can still do your screening, but the government isn't going to pay for it. So the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program really focuses on this group. They've got the most to lose and the most cancers occurring in it. Now, we heard about young onset colorectal cancer increasing, and it is. And there is some investigation, when will we start lowering this to 45? But currently at the moment, it's not increasing enough to start screening that group with a national program. So remember, national program is a taxpayer program. And there are 3 in this country: breast cancer screening, cervical cancer screening, and bowel cancer screening. Bowel cancer is the most effective. This shows your risk as an individual. And you might want to think about this when you're designing your new program. You need to know something about the numbers of people that you're talking about. So if you're 50, that's when you start the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program. You have about a 1% risk of getting bowel cancer in the next 10 years. So I'm a 54-year-old. That means I've got about a 1% risk of getting bowel cancer in the next 10 years if I don't do anything about it. Pretty low, but it's there. If you're in your 40s, it's only 0.3% chance. So that's about 1 in 320. If you're 60, you can see it's rapidly increasing here. About 1 in 36 people will get it in the next 10 years. So those statistics might be helpful when you're thinking about your intervention to increase screening. These are the risk factors. So having excess body fat, being physically inactive, having a high intake of particular foods, particularly processed meats like the pizza you just had, high alcohol consumption and smoking. So all the fun stuff causes bowel cancer. Having a family history and genetic susceptibility is a risk factor for bowel cancer. And if you have a family history, you are advised to screen earlier and more often and maybe more intensively. But again, we heard about 80% of people don't have a family history. So it's not enough. 80% of people with bowel cancer don't have a family history. So it's not enough to rely on that. And radiation, of course, but that's a pretty minor exposure for this group. But the biggest risk factor is not screening. That outweighs these by tenfold. Even if you stop, you lose weight and you be physically active and you avoid pizza, it'll be nothing compared to screening. Screening is 10 times more effective than avoiding these things. And it's simpler. Screening you only have to do when you're 50, and then when you're 52, and then when you're 54. Losing weight, doing exercise, avoiding pizza, avoiding alcohol is relatively impossible. So here's the kit. There's the tubes that were passed around. This is how effective the program is. So if we screened for every 12 people that get the kit, 11 of them will be negative, and 1 out of 12 will be positive. So most people will get a negative letter and be told, fantastic, you're okay, and you generally are okay. The 1 in 12 need to be investigated because we need to find out what was causing that bleeding. How many of those have cancer? Not many of them. 1 in 300 of all people have colorectal cancer, and 1 in 110 have something called an advanced adenoma, which means the growth before it becomes cancer. Advanced meaning it's got a high risk of becoming cancer. But look where they are. Those red ones are the cancer there. They're nearly all in the screen group. That's how good this test is. Yes, occasionally the people who were negative have cancer. You can see it overlaps a little bit. But 85% of cancers are in those that screen positive. It's a very good test. We're very lucky in Australia to have this test. It's a very precise test if you do it every 2 years. You can see that almost all the cancers will be caught. And that's why we do this test. Here's some of the data that was touched on earlier. So let's think about the next 20 years. So from 2020 to 2040, if there was 0% participation in the bowel cancer screening program, if no one did it, if everyone decided to leave it in the car or to throw it in the bin, which a lot of people do, there'd be about 516,000 cases of colorectal cancer in 20 years and about 191,000 deaths. 40% is the current participation rate. We know that's effective, and we know that's saving or preventing 97,000 cases of colorectal cancer and preventing 57,000 deaths, which is a 30% reduction. The robot's fantastic, but it wouldn't be saving 57,000 lives over regular surgery, and doesn't cost $4 million. 50% participation, only increasing it by 10%, we would prevent 124,000 and we'd save 73,000 lives. And here's, if we could get it up to 60%, and this is what is actually occurring in Northern Europe. Denmark, Finland, Scotland, and the Netherlands have a 60% participation in the same program. They get the kit sent out to them as well, but 60% do it. You might say, well, 60%, 40% is still pretty bad. Look at the difference. If we could get the screening from 40% up to 60%, and you'll do this with your design and your case study, you will save an extra, from 40 to 70, from 40 to 60%, you can see it's another 24,000 deaths prevented. Why conduct research on screening participation? Because for every 1% increase, so if you can just increase participation by 1% to go from 40 to 41, then you'll prevent 2,700 colorectal cancers and 1,700 deaths in the next 20 years. That's how powerful public health can be in terms of screening for colorectal cancer. You never know whose life you saved, but these are the lives that you'll be preventing, deaths you'll be preventing. So that's all I have to say. I really hope that you can come up with some novel ideas. There's a good chance I'll be stealing your ideas and putting in a grant application, but I'll be working with you. And I think the winner gets a time to spend time with me in a research setting. So I'll be getting more out of it. So good luck, everybody. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Professor Mark Jenkins, for that amazing presentation. I'd like to welcome our last guest speaker of the night, David Morgan. David is currently an MD4 student with a Master of Public Health at the University of Melbourne. And David was actually a member of the winning team at the most recent International Emory Global Health Case Competition. And we're very lucky tonight to have him here with us to share his insight and experience. Please welcome David.
Okay. I have to follow after you, Mark. Put this on now, so otherwise I look bad. Okay, how's that going? How's everyone doing tonight? It's been a long night. Yeah, lots of smiling faces. Looks like we're doing good. Yeah, no, it's been a fantastic event tonight. Lots of really interesting speakers, and I think it's a great idea that the organisers are putting on to host this competition. So really happy to see, as all the speakers have been saying, so many excited people here tonight. So good work. So my name is David. I'm a final year medical student, and I'm here because I've competed in 2 case competitions previously. And so I've been asked to do 3 things tonight. One is to tell you a little bit about my past experiences with competitions, then to try and take you through some tips and hints about how to hopefully do well in case competitions, and then to tell you a little bit about the combined MD-MPH course at Melbourne University. So hopefully today you'll get some hints that might hopefully help you do a bit better in the case competition. But there is a lot more that you get out of being here today and doing this competition than just winning, as I hope you're all aware. So to start off with my journey, I've competed in 2 case competitions. The first was the University of Melbourne Global Health Case Competition. This was in October last year. We're in a team of 6 people that we were put into, multidisciplinary teams from different fields. And we were given the challenge of tackling obstetric fistula, which is a medical complication associated with pregnancy in rural India. And so we tackled this problem and put together a presentation. From that, there were 6 individuals that were chosen to represent Melbourne University at the Emory International Global Health Case Competition. That's us there. And I was lucky enough to be selected and to captain this team. And as Jessica said, we ended up winning. So that was quite a good experience. And what I think I'd like to highlight about the important things I got out of competing in case competitions, and which is for everyone here today will hopefully experience, multiple things. First of all, it's a great experience to use the skills that you've learnt through university. So all the knowledge you've got through your courses and all the skills you've been practicing, a really great way to put that into practice and to grow it and develop it. You don't really have something consolidated until you've used it in real life. I think it's also really interesting cases. So it's really fun to use those skills in something that is exciting and entertaining. And it's also tackling a real world problem which can have real world benefits. So hopefully you'll be a little bit excited about hopefully having something which can go on to actually be used and lead to good results. So that'll be good. It's also a unique team environment. I understand there's an emphasis on having multidisciplinary teams, so people from different courses and different backgrounds that'll bring a lot to a team. Really in public health and global health and in medicine, multidisciplinary teams are the thing. You really need to know how to do well in multidisciplinary teams to have a successful career. So this is a great opportunity to practice this. And for anyone that's thinking of applying for further studies, master courses, or applying for job interviews, there's always those questions. Tell us about a time when X, Y, Z happened. Multidisciplinary teams are really good for answering those questions for teamwork. So I can guarantee if you do this case competition, you will get the job you want next year. Yeah, and a really good learning environment within those multidisciplinary teams. So you will gain a lot out of it. So I'm going to start now by running you through an example process that you can use to tackle your case competition. These are steps that make sense to me and that I really like. You don't have to take the exact steps like a recipe and go through step 1 to 10. What I'd encourage you to do is just to listen to it, keep your minds open, and maybe take in some ideas or new concepts that might be new to you and apply them to this case. And if there's nothing new, then I really apologise and hopefully you'll just bear with me for a while. So to start off with, as an overall mindset, I encourage you to really use it as an opportunity to learn and develop your own skills. As I've been said, it is a fantastic opportunity. I gained so much from it. And I really encourage you to go in with that attitude and that mindset that will get you the most from it, both personally and professionally. It's a good opportunity. Hand in hand with that, be really keen and open to learning more from others. In the multidisciplinary team, my experience was I learned so much from people from different backgrounds than mine. Different academic backgrounds, different work experiences, people that have done case competitions a lot more than I did. I learned a lot from it. So please go in with that attitude and get the most. And the other third point is sometimes you might be willing to follow the party line, so to speak. In order to present a strong case to judges and one that is convincing, you need to make sure you have a unified front. So make sure that everyone is able to voice disagreements and to respectfully talk about different views in which direction you should take. but do this respectfully and openly and honestly with each other so that you can actually present a unified front and come together as a strong, harmonised team when you actually have to decide on which direction to travel. So thinking now about our initial approach. First of all, make sure that you've done your basic research. So any definitions or concepts that you don't understand, make sure you look into that. This is particularly important. There might be different levels of knowledge between team members. So just make sure you've got all your fundamental assumptions down pat and solid before you move on. Second point, who are the peoples? So often you've probably heard about a stakeholder analysis being talked about. So really you need to know who is involved in the problem that you're trying to help. So this will be who are the people affected by the problem, who are the people trying to solve the problem, and who are other people that hold control over any program you try and implement. So for example, government. And you need to think about how are they affected by the problem, what's their stake, what do they want out of it, and how are you going to convince them to support you and to get behind your program. Human-centered design is also a really important concept. So this really means about thinking, if you're going to have a program or intervention, who's going to be engaging with it? Who's it going to be affecting? And think, how's it going to be acceptable to them, and how's it going to meet their needs as well, so that they're actually going to engage with your program and make it successful. And in real life, this involves involving them at every step of the process. And the third part is a problem tree. So hopefully you know what a problem tree is. It's when you've got your problem and you think of the causes that lead into your problem, and then you have the causes of those causes, and you end up with an upside down tree. This is really good for step 4, which is making targeted decisions. So we're seeing where the key causal pathways are, and these are the key pathways that you can intervene with your program, with your idea, and hopefully stop the problem being caused. So that's a generic approach to starting. Next thing you need to do is actually find your intervention. So once you know all about the problem, you've got to decide what you're going to do. I strongly encourage you to brainstorm wildly. So some people think we're just going to go for the easy ideas, the ideas that make sense, that have been done and tried. And then you have those crazy people in the team that think, well, let's try this, let's try that. All these crazy ideas that might not initially make sense. Go with both, I'd strongly encourage. Make a long list. Some people say even make a list up to 100, and just don't limit or restrict yourself. Another thing I'll say is that any applications of new or novel ideas or technology, this can be really good. This is where you can get groundbreaking changes, and it's also really attractive for judges too. So just keep that in the back of your mind if you can use that. What you'll have to do then is pick some of the interventions, ideas that are your favourites, that seem like they'll do the best, and do a bit more research to see whether they're effective, practical and acceptable. And from then on, you really need to prioritise to see what you're going to go ahead with. So what I'd encourage with this is that you pick one or maybe two, a number of ideas or programs and go with them. Really, you want to avoid a shotgun approach. One of the problems we had in our first case competition at Melbourne University was we tried to fix everything. We had a really comprehensive plan. We attacked all of the key problems in our causal pathway, and it was a really good plan. But because we tried to do too much, we couldn't really get our heads around a strong understanding of each particular element. And the other thing is, if you have too much going on, you don't have one strong idea to sell, it's going to distract the judges and make it a lot harder message to swallow and for them to get their heads around too. So there's multiple reasons why you don't want to go with a shotgun approach in a case competition. Next, you've got to think about bringing your idea to life. So you've really got to structure your intervention. There's the word about having a program logic is very strong in public health. So this involves considering inputs, the people and the resources you need to run your program, the activities, what's actually you're going to use your people and your resources to do, and then your outputs. So short-term, long-term, medium-term outcomes you're hoping to achieve. And I'd really encourage you to consider evaluation in your program. So this is both maybe after a 5-year period, your intervention will be over, thinking about how we're going to prove that it's actually been effective, but also throughout every stage of your program, having evaluation as you go, so that you can show that we're going to see how we can improve our program over time, and we're going to actually continue to make it stronger and better. And then timelining and budgeting is also very important. So make sure you get your heads around that to hold it up nice and strong. A few small tips for impressing judges. One, try and keep things concise and clear. So this is particularly with relation to slides up on the screen, but also in the written documents you'll be submitting. You don't want to have too much detail and too much excitement, too many paragraphs, which just confuse the message you're trying to get across. Another point is to take time to critique your slides and your submissions and how they look aesthetically. something looks good and looks easy to read, it's going to stick with the judges a lot easier. So please do take time to go that extra mile. Third point is about respectfully critiquing, similar to what we were talking about before. To do well in a case competition, you need to be open to receiving personal feedback and constructive criticism. But to do well as a team, you need to make sure you deliver this in a respectful manner and in an open manner. Otherwise, if you end up personally attacking each other, you're going to fall apart as a team. So make sure you have respectful, constructive criticism that keeps you strong as a team, but also grows you as a team. Yeah. And then fourthly, anticipate key questions. So if your chosen solution has any key assumptions or key judgments you've made that justify why you've chosen this, make sure you've researched into that well so that if the judges ask, you can justify and defend it. Okay, so that's a bit of a process for attacking case competitions. What I'm going to do now is just give a quick plug for the University of Melbourne Global Health Case Competition. Applications are now open for this year's competition. So this was the one that I competed in October last year. So if you would like to join, you can apply as an individual and you're put into your own teams. You'll find all the information up on a website that is being created. If you Google University of Melbourne Global Health Case Competition 2019. And if you compete in this competition, you can have a chance to represent Melbourne University at Emory 2020 as well. So if you really enjoy this case competition, I'd encourage you to get on this one too. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is just about the MD-MPH. Does anyone aware of the intercalated MD-MPH program at Melbourne Uni? Few people? Okay, yeah, some people are doing it, yeah, good. So this is a unique degree at Melbourne University. It's only open to about 10 or apparently 15 students this year. It's where you can do a medical course as well as Master of Public Health together. So you take a year off between the third year and the fourth year, which is the final year of your medical course, and you do a Master of Public Health, normally a 2-year course in 1 year. And you do this with negligible overloading. It's a really good opportunity if you're interested in medicine, but also passionate about public health and global health. And we've heard a lot from other speakers about the importance and the potential impact that public health can have. So if that's something you're passionate and interested about, I encourage you to look into it. It'll open up a lot of opportunities for you, and you're also financially supported to take that opportunity. So that's all I have to speak about. And if you have any questions on any of this, also the MD-MPH as well, feel free to come and speak to me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much to David. Now that we have all the guest speakers who have spoken, we'll briefly clarify the UCCC task, the timeline and the screening process with everyone. Just give us one quick second. Yep. Yeah. So, as you all know, the UCCC is an opportunity for university students to critically analyze the state of cancer research, prevention and treatment in today's global society, and to form an innovative solution to improve bowel cancer screening in Victoria, which you've all heard all about today. So the task specifically asks for you and your team to create a preliminary deliverable in the context that the Department of Health and Human Services, or the DHHS, is calling for consultants to help form a strategy on how to increase rates of bowel cancer screening in average-risk groups that are under-screened in Victoria. We invite all current undergraduate and postgraduate students to form interdisciplinary groups of 2 to 4 to together present a proposal in the form of a 15-slide PowerPoint and a 500-word overview report, which is due on 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, 21 August 2019, 2 weeks from today.
Now, just to emphasise, so once registration is closed, the UCCC team will screen every proposal over a 3-day period. Screening will be conducted on a randomised and blinded basis based on a set criteria that you can also find in the UCCC guidelines document. Prior to screening, each UCCC member will be asked about if there is a conflict of interest, so if there's any friends or family they know doing the competition, and said member won't be able to screen said team's proposal. Once screening finishes, the 5 finalist teams will be announced on Saturday, 24th of August at 12 p.m. via email and invited to present their final proposals to a judge panel at UCCC finalist night, which is on Wednesday, the 28th of August. And everyone, regardless of if they're a finalist or not, is welcome to attend.
Yep, so winners will be announced on the evening as well. And just to clarify the prizes, so first prize is $1,000 and an exciting summer research internship at the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health with our lovely Professor Mark Jenkins. Second prize is $500 and third prize is $100.
All right, so where to go from here? Most of you would have, so to those who have registered already, you would have received the case file and guidelines document. Registrations do close this Friday, 9th of August at midnight, so do register if you haven't done that yet. And if you ever have any questions, want more info, feel free to visit our website up there or email the UCCC team. With that being said, we hope that this night has been very informative for you all. Before we end the night with our exciting raffle draw, I would like to invite all our guest speakers up here to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Maybe so is there any questions that anyone wants to ask? Now is the perfect time. Yes.
I just have a question about that guidelines. In the guidelines, it said that we should concentrate on the population with others who are under strain in Victoria. Do we concentrate on just one population group or do we concentrate on multiple?
Right, so just referring to whether you choose to focus on one group or not. As David has mentioned, it is best to streamline your proposal because if you try to tackle too much, it will be quite difficult. But I would actually pass this to David to see what he believes is the best approach in this situation.
Sure. Thank you. I guess my initial thoughts on that question might be you're really trying to look for an area that you can make the biggest impact. So if there's a particular group that has a really big problem, has a really big lack of engagement that you can make a big difference in, then yeah, definitely hone down on that group. If you feel that there's a large gap that you can make for the broader population, then yeah, by all means go for a broader population group too. So I guess this is the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health campaign versus the project campaign that we've seen previously. And there might be some campaign that can target multiple underrepresented groups. So yeah, any way that you think you can have something that's concise and clear and targeted on the same theme. So don't have 10 different programs, 10 different people. If you can have one program that affects 10 different people groups, then sure. That's my thoughts.
Is anyone else? Yeah.
Perhaps along the same lines, so when we're talking about impact, how do we know that this intervention that we're planning actually has an impact? Like, how are we going to test our hypothesis? Are we referring to other scientific or population health articles?
If you come up with an idea that people have tried before and tested it, it could be in a completely different disease or even a different circumstance. That would be better than proposing something that's never been tested. But if it's brand new technology that no one's tried before, then maybe, and you can argue why you think it's going to be effective, then that would be great too. But yes, if it's outlandish and there's no evidence that this will work, then that would be weaker, I guess, than something that has some promise. But we're looking for innovative ideas. We're not looking for an ad on TV, basically. Please don't put that. They work, they're very effective, but we already know that. We're looking for you to come up with new ones. Is that okay? Or did I just wreck everything?
Right, anyone
That's a
else?
question.
So Aisha, you mentioned that there are instructional videos in different languages, but I saw in the test kit it was all in English. So how do people know to go watch those videos?
That's a good question. So that's something that the Cancer Council is trying to do, is disseminate those videos through, say, we're doing community education sessions, or through health workers. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Those videos exist, and not everyone knows how to access them, and we're trying to increase that access. There's one more hand up.
I was just wondering, so if you're trying to kind of, say like you were trying to target like Indigenous Australians, I'm personally not a part of that group, so I was just wondering, like obviously you do a lot of consultation with Indigenous Australians, how do we approach targeting group which we're not a part of? Kind of what question.
It's a great question. I mean, going into a group that you are not a part of, or that doesn't trust you, and trying to get information from them or telling them what to do often does not work. So what works is building a relationship with someone who is a trusted member of the community. They could be an Aboriginal health worker, they could be someone who's a community member, and working with them to get the answers that you would like the community to answer. You could advertise a focus group and invite community members and have someone from the community conducting that focus group, training them to do that. That's one approach. Or going to a key stakeholder from the community who's had a lot of access to the community and sort of knows what will work and what will not work is another approach.
Hi, this is just kind of like a really broad question, but I just want to try to understand, is the problem in disseminating the information to the different groups, or is the problem also about spreading awareness? And like, in your opinion, what exactly is kind of like the pain point in that process? Just want to try to understand that. Quite open-ended.
Good question.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
So I think it's a bit of both, right? Because if you're not aware that you need to be doing the test, you're not going to seek the information. And so, or vice versa, if you get this video that says it's important for your community, the awareness also increases. I think one impacts the other, and we're trying to do both from Cancer Council's end, and on several different levels. So we're looking at an individual and we're seeing, okay, they're in this community, and what do they come across? Oh, they go to their GP, so the GP is going to tell them, do the test. And then they switch on their television and maybe they'll see an ad, and maybe they'll listen to the radio and they'll hear something else. So there's many different points from which we're targeting an individual, because we all know we're not just going to jump with joy and do something once we've been told once. So hopefully, there's different ways in which we're increasing awareness and also providing that and disseminating that information.
Any last questions? Yeah. I was just wondering, so we talked before about how the test gets sent back through like your Medicare, like address. I was wondering if you have any data on like how many people's addresses are correct.
Yeah,
That was actually fascinating.
That's a great question. And I know anecdotally people say, my parents never got the kit when they turned 52. And then I asked, did they move recently? So it's a great question, because the trouble is, if you send out a kit and then the register doesn't get anything back, they don't know it's because the person refused or they weren't even living there. And it was addressed to someone else.
Or someone's had it and doesn't need to do it. And I get mine when I'm 50. I don't need to do it.
So-
I've done my screening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and when we're out in the community, if we're doing an education session, we make sure to mention that. We make sure to tell them, please register the correct address in Medicare. Because, Medicare won't know if your neighbor's stealing your kit and, sending the sample, or whether it's someone who's old who just never received the kit.
So it's even hard to quantify what proportion of the non-responders are that number. Yeah.
And, therefore, very important to empower the individual to know what's involved in getting the kit and doing it.
How easy is it for someone to get screening if, say, they didn't get the test, or if they're outside of that demographic? And also, I guess, a two-part question: is there another way to be screened for bowel cancer that people might find more tasteful, I guess?
So you can buy the kit. So if you're under 50 and you're concerned, and what we say at Bowel Cancer Australia is if you have symptoms, you can go and buy the kit from the chemist. I think they're about $30. You can ask them also. No, I don't think you can get them from CCV anymore. But the kit is there. So you could go to bowelcanceraustralia.org or ask your GP as well. And so what's the next part of your question?
Are there any other methods?
A colonoscopy.
Nothing simpler.
No, dipping them in the poo is the simplest, and a colonoscopy is a very expensive exercise. If you're in private health like me, it's fine, but if you're not.
Oh, and I just want to add that if someone has not received their kit, so if they've turned 50 and they've not received their kit within 6 months of turning 50, or they're 52 and they just haven't received it, whatever age they haven't received it, they can call 1-800, and I forget the end of this number.
930999.
Okay, that's the number to the National Bowel Cancer Screening Program, and they can call them and say, hey, what's going on? I didn't get my kit. Do you have my correct address? Or if you lost the kit, please send me another kit. Sometimes people request a second kit because they didn't get the first kit. They weren't able to complete it correctly. The sample got frozen, or hopefully
the dog ate it.
The dog ate the kit. I don't know. But there are reasons where someone might want to attempt doing the sample again, and they can request for it.
Any more questions, anyone? Real good? All right.
Hello. Hi. I just saw the video about the surgery robots. I'm really interested in that. Could you just explain a bit more about that? Because I'm not a mechanical engineer, just really interested in this. Like, how does it work? What's the process?
It's pretty straightforward, really. There's a cart over the patient, and their little arms have just got lots of little pulleys and wires in it, and it goes back to a central controller, and you move your hands around, and that's translated into movements of the robot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's the more you think about it, the harder it is to use, actually, because you just move your hands and it does it.
Is there any special function of the X-ray? I don't know.
Oh, it's got three-dimensional vision. It hasn't got any haptics, so you can't feel what you're doing. But you have really good vision, and you can scale your movements as well. So it gets rid of tremor. So it does all sorts of other little things like that.
And I had mine laparoscopically with a robot. Fabulous.
Awesome. That officially ends 2019 UCCC Information Night. On behalf of the UCCC team, we would like to extend our warmest thanks to our wonderful guest speakers, Stephanie, Craig, Ayesha, Mark, and David. Please join us in a round of applause.